Well, hello, good morning. This is Andy Mangum from the Christian Church in the Southwest, and this is CCSW Disciples Connect. This is a series of webinars that we've been doing with our general ministry partners and others who do ministry in our region, trying to introduce some of the resources available to the Disciples family that you might want to be aware of. And today, our conversation partner is Reverend Dr. Craig Walls. Craig has been a friend for over 20 years. We went to seminary together, so hard to say that two young men like us have known each other that long, and we met each other as adults. So anyway, but Craig is a graduate of Hiram College, from Bright Divinity School, and from McCormick Seminary, where he got his Doctor of Ministry degree. He has been in local church ministry and youth ministry. He's been a new church pastor in Nebraska, and now he works for the Disciples Church Extension Fund, better known to some of us as BCE, or Board of Church Extension. So Craig, thanks so much for being with us, and appreciate you giving our time today. You'll have a little bit of time to introduce what DCEF offers, and then maybe some time for Q&A. Craig, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that introduction and appreciate being with the Christian Church in the Southwest. I feel like it's I currently live in Kansas City, and so I'm part of the greater Kansas City region, but my heart is always in the Southwest region. I started ministry there, went to Bright, and love the people of the Southwest region. So, Andy, do I have the ability to screen share?
Now you do.
Okay, let me get to the. All right, I think I am sharing.
Yes.
And I just start with the overview of just a little bit about what we do. As Andy said, I started in local parish ministry. I was at Rush Creek for 5 years, and then served in Nebraska for over 15 years. And so I got to know DCEF basically through working with them. They helped us build our church in Nebraska when we built our first building, and worked with them on various capital campaigns and other things. And so I've always, I work for the Disciples Church Extension Fund, but I was a partner or customer, however you want to say it, before I worked there. And I will tell you, I've worked on both ends of it, and Disciples Church Extension Fund is a good partner. It's a good partner for congregations. I was very appreciative of their help in what we did in the local congregation. And so I appreciate the opportunity to now be on this side and to help congregations and work with congregations around their building issues and a whole slew of other things. So, basically, I'll start with who we are. We're almost 39-year-old ministry. So we predate the whole restructure and all of that. We were started at one of the general conventions with a vote, because the church was expanding rapidly. It was on the frontiers, and we couldn't keep up as we weren't a denomination, as a movement of building churches quick enough. And so with a vote of the General Assembly, I think the initial fund that was raised was $2,500. And with that $2,500, we started loaning money to churches to build their churches. And we could build a church back then for $500, which is a staggering amount of money when we think about what it costs today for building. And our first church that we were partners with was in First Christian Church in Atchison, Kansas. We helped build that congregation, and we've been doing this then for 138 years, helping congregations. Our fund is about 140 million, somewhere around there, and give or take. And the way we exist is we operate on the same principles as a bank. but we consider ourselves a ministry. And so we have investors who make deposits with us. Many of you are investors, your congregations are investors, and individuals can invest as well. We have both individuals and congregations. And you invest through us, we pay you a rate of return. Right now, interest rates are really low in general, but our rates are usually comparable to a bank CD, except ours are usually 2 or 3 times higher than a bank CD. So you'll make more interest with us than you will put in your money in a bank. And we use that money then to loan out to congregations for new building projects, remodeling projects, and everything in between. So your money, when you invest with us, is used for churches, and that's how it's backed as well. So that's kind of who we are. That's the business model. We do loans. We've been doing loans with congregations. That's kind of what we started out as, and we still do that. As you can imagine, 100 years ago, we were building new churches. That was the focus of what our loans. Today, we still do that, but we also do additions. We do a lot of remodeling projects, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we also, in addition to that, frankly, we do a lot of loans for roofs and air conditioners and putting projects back together after natural disasters and storms, and things like that. So that's the basic. And I want to also say this about our loans. When you take a loan with us, sometimes you're supporting ministry. When you take a loan with us, that helps other congregations that need loans. And we put in place, we have a couple of products that, again, is through charitable gifts, through people giving to us. We do no interest loans for a portion of new churches when they're building. We have green loans that have a reduced interest rate that help congregations when they need air conditioning or heating units, which that's a huge expense for congregations. So we can give a reduced rate for that. And we also have handicap accessible loans, which help congregations to become more accessible. And so those are usually at reduced rates through people's generosity. So all of those things are kind of that's kind of the core of who we are and what we do. And we appreciate you giving us a call. And then the other thing is, I will tell you, and this is what I tell you from working from experience, we're good to work with. We're good to work with we understand congregations. You're always going to deal with someone. I don't say disparaging things about banks. Other people, there are a lot of bad things you could say about banks, but you're going to talk to someone who understands ministry, and we are your partner. We're invested. We succeed when you succeed. And so we're always work with a congregation. We understand sometimes there are periods or moments in a congregational life that things are a little difficult, and we can extend grace. We have options to help a church get through a rough patch financially. And so that's another really good reason to call us when you're thinking about a project. We can help with that when you're considering a loan. The other thing we do is we help churches raise money through capital campaigns. I'm a big proponent of this, and I know that as a pastor, I just used to cringe. Oh, we've got to ask for more money. We've got to do more money. And I would also like to believe that congregation, we teach tithing. I always taught tithing, but the reality is sometimes we can raise more money sometimes outside of our general operations than if we do a capital campaign. In fact, it's always the case. And I would tell you, as someone who did, I think, 5 or 6 back-to-back 3-year capital campaigns, and that felt a little bit exhausting. If you haven't done a campaign in the last 7 years, you're missing out. There are probably resources that you can bring to bear on your ministry by doing that. And we work with congregations to do capital campaigns. We've had some, and we just started back up after the pandemic. Those got put on hold for a while, but we've had some real successes where churches have oversubscribed by a considerable amount the amount of money that they were able to raise for a project and get people excited about it. Just worked with First San Angelo, and just the amount of money that they've been able to raise for their project has been staggering, and it has surprised everyone. And when we started, we said, if God gives you the vision, God will give you the resources, and we need to trust that and act in faith. And all of us, I worked with them, we were like, I hope that's true, but it's just been astonishing how much they've been blessed by that campaign, and done a few others recently as well. So I always invite you to think about that. The investments, again, the way we do our loans is through investing. And so we can't be in existence without congregations and individuals investing through us. And again, you get a good interest rate. The way we put it is do good and do good at the same time. So you get to do well with your interest rate, and we get to then do ministry through loans. So we invite you to be investors. If you have any questions about that, you can call us as well. So those were kind of the main things that we've always done, and we've done throughout our history. But then we've, in recent years, kind of branched out into some other things that we know congregations need help with. So the big issue that, is in front of the church, we know, is the building issue. And many churches have very large buildings and sometimes very old buildings. And the problem with large and old buildings are they're very expensive to maintain. We have a service, my colleague Jim Michael leads that group, in which we do a building evaluation for you. And we can come in and work through your building and kind of give you, here's the thing that you need to work on immediately. Here are things that you're going to have to work on in the next 5 to 10 years. Here are the things that are long-term. Here are some of the costs, just to give you kind of a way forward in how to deal with your building. And then we can work with you on some solutions to that. There is a cost to that. It depends on the size of the building. I just want to say it's roughly about $3,500, $4,000. But I'll tell you that the real benefit of a building evaluation that we have found is we don't have an agenda. So you're going to have a contractor come into your building to do this evaluation, but that contractor is not there to sell you anything or try to get you to buy something. We're there to just provide you information. So that's one of something that we're able to provide for congregations. Similarly, we have something that is not often used, but every church I've worked with that uses it, they really find it to be a blessing, are architectural consultations. So let's say you have a building and you're thinking about, you want to do some remodeling project, or you think you need to do something, but you're not quite sure what or what would work. If you go to a contractor or get an architect involved, you're talking 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows how much money, thousands of dollars, just right off the bat before you even know what's possible. Architects are very expensive. So what we've done is we have a couple of architects we work with, which will come out to your church and sit with a group of your leaders and just kind of listen, and then maybe offer some ideas, give you some initial sketchings. Now, these are not construction drawings. They're not going to do anything formal, but you're basically going to have an architect that can show possibilities. And again, the cost on this is, I think, $2,500, $3,000. A lot of it's just travel and stuff. And it seems like it's a lot of money, I know, but it's a lot less money than paying an architect to tell you can't do something. So that's another service if you just want to get some ideas that we do for architectural consultations. And then the third thing that we've really kind of gotten into are ministry planning. We're in partnership with what used to be called Hope Services. So we have some of our ministry planning through New Beginnings and Epiphany. But we also I do some things with congregations. Again, I worked with San Angelo and I've done it with others, some discernment process to really ask the question, what is God calling us to do? What is the thing that God wants us as a congregation? And what is the bold step of faith? How are we going to act in faith? And so we're happy to work with a congregation to kind of help get a church also through a process, also to make a decision. I know as a pastor, one of the hardest things is to get a church to make a decision. And sometimes it's easier to make no decision than to ever make a decision. And that obviously is a decision. And so how do we help churches take a step forward and move forward with these projects? And I'll tell you, every church project I've done, I've been with DCEF for now about 4.5 years, they're all blessings of some sort. I've never had a project that, people sometimes argue about this or that, the color of this, and we argue about the project. But once you get going and once it happens and once people get behind it, it almost always brings energy to a church. And it's almost always a net positive. So those are all those things. The last thing I'll say on this is the way this all starts. If you don't know where to start, just call me or email me, and we do what we call a general consultation. There's no cost to the church. I do it via Zoom if that's what your congregation likes, or I also come down. I prefer to do them in person just to see the facility, to get to know the people of your congregation, the leaders. And we do a general consultation, and we just provide you information. I go through all this stuff, how we work, and then leave it up to you. So it's a good way to just get ideas going. So those are the basic things. And Andy, is it all right if I just keep going, or is there questions? I don't know if that.
No, this is great. Thanks. One question I would have is, on the loans, do you do loans for ministries that aren't necessarily congregations? Do you do schools or assisted living facilities? Any kind of like I said, outside of the congregational life, do you do loans for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. I'm glad you asked that. So we can, our charter, we can work with any disciples entity. We can actually work with, again, because we predate our everything else, we can work with Church of Christ, and we can work with independent Christian churches, everyone from our Stone Campbell movement. And that goes along with all the how would you call it, the auxiliary ministries. We do loans with MBA, with regions, but we are doing more creative loans for senior. We've done senior housing with a congregation that wants to do that. We've done that in some cities. We've done schools. Some of our largest loans, we have a loan in Florida with a church that has a really big school. Schools are big in Florida, and actually some in Texas. We just did a loan in Houston for a school to help keep a school going during the pandemic. So we do schools, we do preschools, although those are a little more challenging for a variety of reasons. But we can do loans for anything that is a ministry related thing. And so we have a pretty big scope on what that can be. In fact, just worked with, I'll give you another example with, I hope it's okay to, the congregation in Wichita Falls, who they're creating a private enterprise. So we're all about being creative. And so they're creating a private enterprise, and we provided the loan for that, even though it's not. So we're pretty open for those. Good question.
Thanks.
Anything else, or?
No, that's it. That's good.
Okay. Just some observations just from being in the field, some things that for you all to think about is that many, I put here most, but many of our buildings are too old or too big or too outdated or too inefficient, too out of the way. And the reality is that buildings can become a barrier for vibrant ministry. Buildings should help facilitate our ministry and bless our ministry. And I don't need to tell anyone this, but sometimes the older they get, they become the focus. They become everything. They become an idol. I mean, we're the building people, but we need to admit, we need to say that our buildings become an idol, and it hinders our ministry. So one of the things that we're really working on, and this goes into that general consultation, is how do we help you to make your building a blessing and not a curse on your ministry? What does that look like? And there are so many answers to that. There's not one answer, because it depends on every location and every situation. And So do we need to remodel our building? Is that what's really holding us back? Do we need to renovate? And there are a lot, and frankly, many churches do need to do this. You know, we don't see the problems when we walk into a church, but I've been in too many buildings where, I'll be honest, I know that they're going to have a hard time attracting visitors, or they're going to come and they're going to walk out because it has a connotation. Your building gives a connotation of who you are and what you. So we need to remodel or renovate. Sometimes we need to re-envision. Do we even need this building? Right. Is this again blessing us? There are some churches that are just way too big, and there's so much money being sucked away. But we also want to be careful because we don't want to give away buildings that have a great value, and we can't get those back. And so we've got to be really thoughtful about going through a process of, and I'm big on asking God, what do you want us to do? Let's make sure we include God in that equation. This isn't what we want or what we think will work, but what is God calling us to use? God has given us this resource, and how do we leverage that? And there are a million different answers.
Craig, I think, Craig, that's one of the real advantages of working with DCEF versus working with a bank is that you know, you and others who work for Disciples Church Extension Fund come at this as ministry, and so are going to ask ministry questions first and align the property use with the ministry outcomes rather than the other way around. And when I first met Rick Reisinger, he came to visit with me when I took this job, and one of the things that just he caught me off guard, but he said so often the building becomes the mission, and that's not what we want. And I thought that's absolutely right. But you're right. The language I use is alignment. You have to align your property with your mission, and I think that's one of the things that DCEF can help with better than right. You don't want to badmouth banks, or they're valuable institutions. We need them. And when we've done property campaigns in my ministry, we use banks instead of DCEF. I wish we'd use DCEF because we had to back into these questions that I think you and others step into directly. So I just want to echo that or amen that.
Thank you. And then the last part here is just relocate. Sometimes we need to relocate for a variety of reasons, and even it's just the build, to get into a different building situation. So we can help with all of those. That's kind of what we do, and I agree. That's how we come out at it, from ministry. On the renovate and remodel, just going to give you couple of examples. I have some pictures on here I'll show you, but like one of the ones we worked with is Costa View in Dallas. We helped them renovate. We did a capital campaign with them to help them renovate their sanctuary. Actually, it wasn't their sanctuary. It was their fellowship hall, which they were going to turn into their sanctuary, which because their sanctuary was too big. And now actually just got a call last week where they're doing more. So, we find that sometimes we do a renovation on a part and that goes so well and creates energy. Okay, let's keep going. But we also, just to be aware, older buildings can cost a lot for renovation. You deal with things like asbestos, which we can help you with. We can look at cinder block walls are my favorite. Those big walls that every church whether it was built at a certain time has, because you can't drill through them. You can't get, it's hard to move walls. And then there's the handicap accessibility issue that goes along with that, can be really challenging. But this is just a picture of, I thought, a great example of taking an old space. This was their fellowship hall, and doing a remodeling project. It wasn't super expensive. I think it was $150,000, which I know is a lot of money, but we're not talking millions here. And just made it more modern and made it their worship space, and became a real blessing to that ministry, and helped again align what they were trying to do and who they were trying to reach with their space. So often we say we want to do one thing and our space says something else. And
just want to say amen again there, Craig. I have worshiped with Costa View, and that the space and the character of who they're becoming and who they've become over the last 5 years is so much connected together. It's just a really good example of how that partnership works. And I think it was a result of the whole partnership consultation years ago. So just a whole kind of lifespan of their partnership with you all.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found often happens is I'll have conversations with a church, and we'll kind of the other thing about working with us is it doesn't happen. We're in the crock pot business. This is not a happens in the microwave quickly. Projects take time. It takes years often to do a project and to do it right and to bring the whole congregation along and to do the capital campaign and to get everything lined up. So if you're thinking you might want to vision something in a year or two, call us now, because it will take all of that time to do that. This is another example of a renovation recently did. This is Tropical Sands Christian Church in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And they had a very traditional sanctuary, and it still is traditional sanctuary. But they painted everything. They did new lighting, new light fixtures. They were able to bring the video, the modern video screens in a way that worked. It was just a new flooring, a beautiful renovation. Again, I think they spent maybe $300,000 or $400,000 on this renovation. They had it go out into their fellowship, the gathering area, what would have been the old narthex. But just to show you that churches do this, that churches do renovate, and it becomes a blessing. The other thing that, as I said, other than the renovation, is the re-envisioning, and that goes to those ministry planning. What can God do for us? What does God want us to do? I like to work in a discernment process with the church. I do a holy listening exercise. It's a 40-day, prayer time, frankly, of let's let God lead us in this. And so how do we re-envision what we're being told to do? One of the things we all know that we need to use our space, especially our older buildings and especially in cities, to lease out space. And I'm all for that. Leverage your building in any way you can to help pay for it. That's a fair thing. But we also need to be realistic that that's not going to change our ministry. That might pay some bills, but that won't necessarily help move a needle on your overall ministry. But I want to share an example of a re-envisioning. So Weatherford Christian Church about 3 years ago was really trying to decide, do we stay, do we go, what do we do with what we've got? And ultimately, they decided to stay and re-envision what they would do with their space. And they did some remodeling, like this was the sanctuary, and there's some new things in this. They put in chairs and new carpet and the screens and all of that. And this is, a very traditional A-frame building, and they did a really nice job of interior. But the thing that I was so impressed is they really reimagined their outdoor space. What does that look like? And coming out of COVID, who knows, I think that's going to be more and more important as we go forward. But they spent a lot of money, and this was a pretty extensive renovation outdoors, creating outdoor space, and they did a fantastic job with it. And I know people felt that it was a blessing, their renovation. They also did some
in that outdoor space, if I'm not mistaken, that church has some worship experiences for people who, for varieties of reasons, don't feel comfortable going into a church building. This is pre-COVID. There were people who were just kind of disenfranchised with church, disconnected from church or whatever, or maybe just never been in church, but didn't want to make the commitment even to go inside a church building. And by creating this worship space outside, and they've even got some performance venue kind of on the other, if you were standing where that building is and taking a picture the other direction, there's a pavilion kind of space that they've got, amphitheater kind of space that they have, but really designed to let people worship in their own at their own pace. So yeah, I think it's another great example of property use and the people you're trying to meet, the people you're trying to be, really aligning in a beautiful way.
Yeah. And we help them with their loan and their capital campaigns and all of that with them. So, and they also did some really neat things inside. Like one of the things that I shared earlier is those stupid brick cinder block walls. You know, they're ugly. What do you do with them? Well, they came up with this creative way. They've got some wraps that they've used to do that. And so, again, there's a lot of things that we can ideas that we can provide as you think through your project. The next one, this is San Angelo. I was telling you about their project. There's a whole slide deck that I don't have for them, and they're in the midst of it, so that actually hasn't happened yet, or it's happening as we speak. But again, they were just really struggling with, do we stay in this downtown location or do we move? And they had some conflict even over that, and we worked through a discernment process with them. Pastor TJ is a great leader and helped. He came in right as we were starting. And they ultimately decided as a congregation, God is calling us to be here, but we can't be here and do the same thing. It has to be different. And so they are doing an extensive reimagine remodeling from everything from the sanctuary, and they also are creating outdoor space. For example, here's some of the concept drawings of what they're looking at because they're right in downtown, right by a hospital. They want it. The theme of theirs became the backyard of San Angelo. They want to be the backyard of San Angelo. I love that concept. And that's reimagining your space, old buildings that cost a lot, and how do we reimagine that? And they've had, again, some remarkable things happen once they began their project. The last thing, these are the three main ones. Relocation, churches do think about that. I think sometimes churches probably need to think about this, and some churches wait way too long. When you're down to 8 or 10 people, that becomes challenging. I will tell you, it doesn't work in all locations. I think there are places, large cities, like I put Houston, where it can be challenging just because people come from so many different places. Where do you go? What does that look like? It really would change over it's not to say that it can't happen. To be aware of some of the things that people in the church aren't always aware of, that the value isn't usually in your building, it's in the property. And so that you have to take that into account. And relocation can create energy. And I always get this other question. I was at one church in Texas that said, well, will we lose people? And I have to say, yes, you will. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but you just need to be realistic. Anytime we do anything in ministry that is of significance, frankly, there will be opposition of some sort. And so, but you also gain people. The relocations we've seen or we've worked with, yeah, you lose some people, but you also gain a bunch of new people. So, that's just, you've got to weigh those things. And really big, and we can help at DCEF to try to really make sure, if you're considering a relocation, that you get in the right place. You don't want to, where we settle, some churches are one block off of prosperity. We want to make sure we choose the right location, that we have visibility, and things like that. And usually you have to pay for that. So we can help you with all of those things. I know when we were building my new church, and church extension consultant came out, Ryan Hazen, who is now at Geist Christian Church in Indianapolis. He really helped us think through where we want to be and some of the issues that, land wise and those, we're just an extra set of eyes, and we're happy to come out and just be your partner with that. Obviously, one of the churches that did relocate was Connections Christian Church in Odessa.
Back to your previous slide, maybe I missed it. You say it doesn't work in all areas, and then you have Houston there. I'm assuming you mean that no matter how much you get for your property, you're not going to find replacement property at least within the city limits of Houston, that'll be affordable. Is that what you're saying, or what are you saying there?
I'm hesitant to even say that. I would say that it's just challenging sometimes in cities. And I'd say for two reasons. One, you've got to then find another location. And the problem with finding a location is usually in a city like Houston is your people aren't in the neighborhood that they're there. And so they're coming, so then you always get the question, well, where do we go? Well, if we go over to this side and the east side, well, then these 5 families will be happy, but these 10 families are going to be angry, and that are over on the west side. And then, so that's the challenge that churches face in a place like Houston. It's the property cost, but it's also where do you go, that it's not impossible, but it can be challenging.
Gotcha.
That's what I mean, Andy.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I just want churches to go in with their eyes open,
Right.
Sometimes they don't think through all the issues that are going to happen.
Yeah.
Connections is a perfect example of a relocation within the city, and they took a very unchurch-like building and made it their own. And they have ministries out of it and community partners. They've done a great job of that and of leveraging their new space. And
yeah, another great example. Those are 2 of our classmates, Joe and Dawn Weeks, who are there, and just the ways in which they built on existing relationships to create the partnerships that operate out of that building. It's just a really good example of ministry gone right.
Yeah. And so I just want to say, I believe in working on your property issues can be a blessing, but I also want to just say that it's difficult work. People have a lot of emotions, a lot of ties to buildings and things. But I really believe that if we do that hard work and we gain consensus and we get a vision of what we said, Andy said, alignment, that this can be a blessing. So that's kind of my, 30-second.
Right. So Craig, how do we, so how do we reach you? And if people are saying, yes, we need something here, how do they get a hold of you?
Can I put in the chat my email address? Will that work?
You're probably just gonna have to voice it because the chat's not going to show up. I'll put it in the chat on Facebook.
The easiest way to get me is my email, which is cwalls at disciplescef.org. So that's disciples, CEF as in Church Extension Fund.org. And cwalls is just CWALLS. That's my email, and that's an easy way. My direct number is 317-713-2537.
Great. And because many of our folk in the Christian Church of the Southwest speak Spanish, you also have a colleague, Rosario, I believe is her name, that it works with primarily our Spanish-speaking congregations and leaders, at least in this region. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Rosario can work with, she's a great resource, and her email is the same as mine. It's just R Ibarra, I-B-A-R-A.
It's not 2 R's?
It might be.
I have her card here somewhere. I should find it. So.
And yes, and so if it's a Spanish-speaking congregation and need help with that, Rosario is a great resource.
Yeah. Craig, thanks so much for your time and your energy, and just as we said before, we're finding so often that much of what we do in the regional office is we explain what other ministries do, and so I've believed in the ministry of referral for a very long time. As a local church pastor, I knew had a stack of cards of people that I trusted. You are personally in this work. You are among the top of the people that I trust. I always feel at ease when I know that you're working with a congregation, because I know they're being treated like a church and being related to in ministry. And so thankful for you. So thankful for the work that you do. And like I said, Disciples Connect wasn't meant to try to probe anything urgent, but rather just introduce who our ministry partners are. We kind of think of it as the old Sesame Street song. These are the people in my neighborhood. And so Craig and DCEF and Rosario and others that are there are the people in our neighborhood, help us do good ministry. So thank you so much. If it's okay, Craig, I'm going to ask you to, if you can, closing words, whatever, but offer a prayer as we conclude our time together.
Yeah, sure. And I am very grateful for our partnership and our friendship, Andy. And thank you for having me. So let's pray. God, I lift to you the congregations of the Christian Church of the Southwest for their ministry, for the pastors who work diligently to share the gospel. I pray for the churches, for that you would send your Spirit, that we would share grace and goodness and God's love with the people we encounter. Help us to be a blessing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.